Thank you, Kara. Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody and welcome. I see some of you are putting your location in the chat. Oh, wow, look at that. So we've got people from all over. That's wonderful. Great to see so many folks that we know and some new names as well. So we're thrilled to have you join us in this presentation. We're really going to have a conversation around student data privacy in action and some of those challenges that we face every day within districts as well as state departments of education. But before we do that, we wanted to kind of ground ourselves with some data. Essentially, schools, districts, you're balancing an overwhelming number of digital tools. We can see from these data points that there's on average over 2,000 apps in use. I don't think I need to tell you that with over 2,000 apps, that comes with the challenge of who's vetting those applications for privacy, for efficacy, and for other criteria and metrics that you're using in each of these districts. And look at the time, the data point about that 50 hours per month. So I don't think we need to say how those challenges and data points are creating a more complex ecosystem for all of us. But we did want to kind of understand where everyone was coming from on today's call. So we wanted a little bit of audience participation. So we have a poll that we're going to put up here in just a minute. But before we do that, we wanted to introduce ourselves. And my name is Monica Watts. I'm Senior Director of Learning Innovation at One EdTech. And on the panel today, we have
good afternoon. My name is Matthew Jackson. I'm the coordinator for digital and media services in Fayette County, Georgia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gianna Cosma, product marketing manager at Lightspeed Systems. I help educate about our products that support data privacy, compliance, and cost savings.
Awesome. So we're going to do a little bit of engagement here with our first poll. So the poll is going to pop up on your screen. And if you would be so kind, on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you in your district's ability or school, wherever you're coming from, to vet new educational apps for student data privacy? And so you see the scoring there. If you go ahead and fill that out, we'll give you a few seconds to do that before we close the poll. All right, let's go ahead and end that poll so that we can see where everybody's coming from. Oh, wow. Okay. Excellent. So we're kind of in, looks like middle of the range, moderately confident. Great place to start. Some of us are extremely confident, which is excellent. And we also have some that are starting and embarking on this. So that's great. Excellent. Thank you for that. Thank you for filling that poll out. We have one more question for our audience to kind of gauge where we're coming from. And that is, which of these is your biggest data privacy challenge? So you can go ahead and select those that apply. You should see that poll pop up and give you a few seconds to do that. All right, let's go ahead and close that poll and see where we are. Oh, wow, we've got a mix. Okay, Matt, you've got your challenge for the next hour.
I shall do my best.
Excellent. So, all right, thank you. Thank you all for participating in that.
Great. Thanks for opening us, Monica. So as part of our discussion today, we'll kind of, we want to learn about what Fayette's process, Matt and his team looked like before developing an app vetting process, then go into how it works today, what he requires from vendors and how he's thinking about his vendor partnerships, and then get into how Fayette County stays ahead with changing privacy policies, as well as how they build trust with parents. And finally, we'll kind of touch on how staying on top of data privacy and compliance, what that impact is on ROI before we wrap up with Q&A. So let's jump right in. Matt, I would love for you if you could share what was your vetting process like before you had a formal app vetting system in place?
So I would say before it was definitely the wild, wild west, down here in Fayette. One of the things we would do when I was a teacher 12 years back, we would email our favorite technology person and hope that they turned it on for us, turned on that app or allowed us to use that app because it was, we started off as a Chrome district and we still are a Google district. But it was more just different people turning on and enabling these for us. So there was no consistency at all district wide, system in place. And, we started discovering that schools would go off on their own tangents and start purchasing applications and resources and then look to us, where we train, but we also work on the physical technology in my department, but we didn't have enough trainers, and then we would have to go and learn the product that the school bought. So there was no consistency whatsoever across our school district. I would also add that the teachers, they're fantastic, and they find different types of applications. For example, when they go to local conference, that they'll bring back to the district with them. And a lot of times, back several years ago, we would just allow those applications, as the teachers requested them, especially if we had a group that we had, 10, 15 different teachers emailing us about it. So there wasn't, a centralized way for us to, stay in touch with the data privacy part of all of this. We were newbies to it as well. Before we were just focused more on, the Microsoft, the tools and the suites or suite there. And then, the different Google tools and resources. And, there was a point where students could even go in and just pull down their own extensions and applications. The instructional alignment, of course, was missing. And a lot of times the content coordinators were not involved in what the teachers were using. So there may have been little to no alignment of the Georgia standards to what was, inside of that application or that digital resource. Because, we talk about apps, but it also applies to websites too, depending on how the student's interacting with the content. And, having the ability to track and see what is being used effectively and what effective resources are out there was really a big challenge, because it was all based on just feedback and emails. There was not a central location, where we could have those types of conversations as a district.
Right. And I know a lot of districts can resonate with that Wild West of apps experience. So in our conversations, you've shared a bit about your process now. And so would love for you to share, how does that process look today when a teacher wants to bring in a new app?
So, now what teachers have to do is we have a ticketing process whereby they submit the digital resource. And what we do is inside the questioning, when they do that submission, we ask them for a number of different, pieces of information to help us out. But before they even get to the ticketing part, we want them to have conversations at the school level, start at their grade level. Do we already have a resource in place that does this thing? Because one of the things that, big things we notice is a school might be paying for two different resources that overlap or can do the same thing. So we try to help with that. Or the district's paying for a resource that the school level doesn't like. And how can we get, move past that? Is there professional development, that we can provide? So then, once the discussion's been had at that school level, and the principal signs off on it, because any request has to go through the school principal, then our content coordinators would take a look at it and then check against any resources that they may have. And if they already have something, that would be a great opportunity to go out and do some, professional development. with those teachers or those schools. So it definitely helps, being able to see being able to quantify the usage of a resource in terms of targeted professional development. These schools aren't using it. Is it because of this, or that? So those are great ways for us to get in the door and start helping with the resource, especially if it's a paid district resource that we expect the teachers to use, like a paid textbook, for example. If the new tool that the teacher, the original teacher wanted is still needed, then they would be able to submit a ticket. And we just use Incident IQ. We created a custom form where the teacher has to show where they've actually spoken with the vendor. They have to provide information about the privacy policy. They are the gatekeeper, if you will, of how old must the user of the application be in order to use the resource. Because in the end, we're concerned about just sharing all of this personally identifiable information, or PII, with hundreds of different vendors, and we don't even know where they're from, what country. They may be in a country that doesn't follow the laws of the United States, which would be any other country. So where are their servers located, for example, where our information is being stored at. So that formal request process is really important, and we take it seriously. And if they don't complete all fields, we just we'll send it right back to them and explain why, because we don't want it to just be like a punitive thing or something like a roadblock being in their way. We want them to learn, and by having them go through that privacy policy, is a way to do that, because ideally, all educators are thinking, the same way about student privacy. So our application review team, evaluates whatever the resource is using the One EdTech rubric. This is a fantastic resource that we adopted several years ago, and I believe we'll have some more information about this as we go through today. But that focuses on how vendors collect student data, school data, teacher data, the security of the application. When they built the application, did they build it with security in mind? Does the application require two-factor authentication? Those are different things that we have, or we see inside of the rubric. Is there advertising? One rule of thumb is this: if the resource advertises to students, we do not allow it, because we can't control what advertisements are going to pop up on the screen. And then the third party sharing, we probably all have partners who do share some information, maybe for just analytical purposes, but we also try to go to that step. And that's kind of one of our newer ventures, if you will. Now we need to go and vet, these third parties, but eventually it just, because they have third parties and, on and on and on. The One EdTech rubric, though, it's also reviewed or utilized as we review our standards alignment. We want to make sure that whatever, that resource is based on Georgia standards. So a lot of times that might be a separate rubric that each individual coordinator, maintains. And we work with our coordinators so they understand this process as well. What's the instructional value of the resource, and whether something similar is already in place or not, like I mentioned earlier. So once we review, the resource, it'll then go to our curriculum coordinators, and then they actually have the final decision about whether it's approved or not. So thus far, it's gone through the technical process of review, the privacy policy. It's gone through a general instructional review, and now it's in the hands of the content coordinator, and they either yay it or they nay it. And if it's approved or not approved, it's put on the Lightspeed Insight dashboard. So we're longtime partners with Lightspeed, and they have a lot of great resources that we utilize throughout this process. So if it's approved, it's marked as approved, and then we even put the grade levels there so that there's a public dashboard that we'll talk about in a couple slides here. But the public dashboard allows teachers and students to see, and parents to see, what we have approved. If it's denied, we like to put the rationale. It was denied because we already have a resource, and here is the resource that does the exact same thing. And we can also mark it as in review, meaning that it's somewhere in the process. And beginning of the school year, it certainly takes a while. I know some school systems will only offer certain times during the school year where they do all of this. Right now, ours is ongoing through the school year, but we typically get them, starting, they're the middle of July or so. And they'll start coming in, and then we have the Georgia ETC conference coming up where a lot of teachers will attend. So, we're already expecting a lot there. But, sometimes we have to put a little notification, on our dashboard that just says, it might take 5 or 6 weeks before we even, get to the resource. And then, the final part of this approval, it's actually not the final, but one of the end steps is putting it in ClassLink. So we have the whole district uses ClassLink. Our LMS is there, and getting to their Gmail and all those things are there. But we only put the approved ones that have gone through this process, and we only roster the ones that the district is paying for. We don't roster if an individual school goes off and purchase it, just because of the manpower involved with doing that. We'll support them the best we can, but we can't take one individual school and because then we're the point of contact for service and support, and we may not even know what that resource does. So
Great. That sounds like a very robust process from, starting out with teachers kind of discovering and using their own apps without leadership or IT instruction, even having a chance to vet that and to know about it. So go
Gianna,
ahead.
if I could add, Matt, that was outstanding. I see so much of this in the community, and I think it's important that those listening understand that this has been a several year process, correct? Not overnight. And so much is also starting with culture. We had a question in the for the panelists, and it's about teachers and how do you feel teachers understand why it's important to have privacy agreements? And do you have any established PD for teachers about PII and the legal requirements?
So right now the answer is yes. So we get out into the schools, the principals invite us out, and we try to do larger, faculty groups just for the time saving sake, and the personnel, the amount of personnel we have, because they want us here approving their apps too, right? So we'll go out, visit a school, usually do a presentation and pull up a privacy policy example and go not a real long one, but just kind of go through it with them and point out, some of the big red flags that we're looking for, before we actually, move forward with it. We also use the Know Before dashboard. I know the state of Georgia has done some help the school districts with that. But what it does is it allows you to send out little quiz questions to all the faculty. You can do, simulated phishing attempts with your faculty. So it's great, and that's kind of wrapped into, the security and what we're talking about here, which is why I mentioned that. The reception was, and I think anybody will experience this, it was pretty abrupt, I would say, for the teacher who is used to just being able to go and get, because we turned off the Microsoft Store. There's the app stores turned off. Teachers have access to all the YouTube videos, but we turned all that access off for our students. They have to now request even the videos using the exact same, ticketing process. That way they're signing off saying that they have, watched the video and everything. But it took, a little while for the teachers to understand it. Now, at this point, I believe they understand it. They definitely don't all agree with it. But now they're kind of getting that understanding of the why part because of how, like I said, if an app is denied and us specifying, on the Lightspeed dashboard, this is why it was denied. We don't want to just say no and, dismiss their ticket. We want to give them a why. So we, develop canned comments and, different things like that we can put there just to try to keep them understanding the process. And we're not just the internet police, if you will.
Great. So now that we've heard a bit about how your internal process works, looking at the vendor side, when you're evaluating a new vendor, what do you require before moving forward?
So we, the first thing we look at is their privacy policy. And let me talk about how we would do it for like in an individual application that a school is requesting versus how a district would do it, because it is different. So if a teacher is requesting a free application, we're going to pull the privacy policy, the terms of use, and that's where that one EdTech rubric comes in. And we utilize that rubric. We, fill the entire rubric out. And the way we did that was we made a template in Google Sheets, and we're able to just go in and type in our notes, as we're going through and evaluating these privacy policies. And once you start doing it, you can do them pretty quickly. So we evaluate all the apps, with that one EdTech rubric. Nothing does not go through that rubric. Even so, then looking at what student data is collected, that's, really our, the most important point. And employee data, we want to make sure that vendor is securing it. How are they securing it? Like I mentioned earlier, are they using two-factor authentication or a complex password? And then are they sharing that information? Are they selling that information? How are they making money? Either they're making money by selling it to us and we're paying for it, or they're making money off of our data somehow. There's rarely in between. I'm sure there's definitely in betweens, but I would think that would be somewhat rare. Does the vendor include, the advertisements inside of the applications? Because, we want to make sure that our students are getting quality and not being, bombarded with, you need to buy this, because they can't buy all those things. And, it's kind of a waste, in my opinion, for the student side to even see advertisements. Now, if a teacher sees an advertisement, that's a little different. We're not as strict about that, but the student side, it's a no-go for sure if they see advertisements at all. If their language, within that privacy policy is vague, then typically we can do a couple things. We've reached directly out to the vendor, on behalf of the school. Other school districts and one EdTech have evaluated a lot of the applications already, and they're conveniently located in Lightspeed, where we can see at least how somebody else evaluated it. We still evaluate them all ourselves, but that's good information to have that. And then if the vendor doesn't provide us with a satisfactory answer, we'll tell them why. We're not going to use that app or that resource. So ideally, the vendor already has a one EdTech certification. That's icing on the cake right there. We still vet them, fully vet them and everything. We're a little bit more comfortable, with that whole process. But that definitely, having that one EdTech certification accelerates the review process for us, and the teacher's able to get to the resource much faster. I don't think we've ever denied an application that was already had that one EdTech certification. So it pretty closely aligns with, what we do here in Fayette County. And then approval, it's not just about the functionality of the application. Does it align with like our internal standards that we have? Does it align with the quality, of resource that we have here in Fayette County? And we've actually started, we've created, right now it's 8 pages long, so it's rather long, but we have our own privacy policy that we're now asking our vendors to sign. And we've had some signatures, so it's good. Now, to be transparent, we're not sure what we would do if a big one said no, but we would work closely with that vendor to see why, because we feel it's equally as important that they are following our contract as well, especially if it becomes a paid resource. Now, paid resources are different, because I was talking about more about the free resources, but the paid resources, when we're talking about the privacy policy of the vendor, we're definitely going to interact with them back and forth. We're going to say we need this added to the privacy policy or that added, depending on the size of the resource and the number of users. It'll even go through our legal team. And we're talking about like months, right? Like these are long-term types of approval processes. But then, of course, we would follow the same procedures, once that happens. And then a lot of times we've had the vendors change their privacy policy on their actual website. So, by us sharing and having that common, one EdTech rubric verbiage, if you will, I think a lot of the vendors are starting to realize, especially the K-12 vendors, starting to realize that, these guys are pretty serious about security and, data privacy for students.
Great. And Monica, this is a great place to bring you in. Can you help connect this to the bigger picture, to what Matt has been sharing? How does the One EdTech privacy certification help districts like Fayette?
Absolutely. So Matt did a wonderful job talking about TAMS, and I think there were some questions in the chat. TAMS stands for Trusted Apps Management Suite, and as a member of One EdTech, you have access to the program, the app vetting program, and also as a Lightspeed customer, you have access to the vetting results as well. So on your screen, you're looking at an application or extension, or as Matt said, even a website, free app or paid app that's been vetted. And in the program, our data privacy team has vetted over 12,000 applications and extensions and websites. And we use a privacy rubric that was developed by our community being our members who compose K-12, higher ed, as well as providers. And so there's 4 criteria that we evaluate. We look at advertising. I saw some questions in the chat about the privacy policies being different for free or paid. I don't know if that was answered, but it is certainly different. As Matt alluded to, if it is often free, the cost is sometimes your own student information. That's the currency. So we see a lot of red in that area in advertising because of the questions that we're looking at when it comes to advertising. We have some states like Virginia where targeted advertising is not accepted in that state. You cannot target students in your advertising. And so there's a specific question around targeted advertising in that section. We look at third-party data from the framework of how are they sharing in their privacy policies and stating how they're sharing with third parties. Does it adhere to their own privacy policy, or does it adhere to that third-party data privacy policy? And then the security section looks at whether they state in their terms of service and privacy policies if they have multi-factor authentication, kind of an overview of their security policies. And then data collection is how they are collecting data. For example, if you were to no longer be a customer of that app, how long do they retrieve your data for? We want to see really clear terms, and that is what we're looking for, is as much transparency as possible. And then what we do is we publish those vettings, as you can see, green indicating that they meet in that area. Partially meeting is yellow or amber color, and red is not meeting. And as Matt said, he looks at every single evaluation before he looks at his own, in conjunction with his own governance This also takes a look at whether they have made a statement if they're COPPA, FERPA, or GDPR compliant, as well as if they're approved for children under 13. And we also always cite the sources that we use, which sometimes require that we look at their cookie policies, their privacy policies, and their terms of service. And then lastly, it's a little hard to see on this screen, but if they have also gone through the data privacy certification with our data privacy officer, Kevin Lewis, they will be granted the data privacy certification. It's hard to see there, but that allows you to understand that they have completed the data privacy review with our data privacy officer and addressed anything that may have come up in that review as well. And that is a yearly certification. So if anything changes in that year, that would be reflected as well.
Great, thanks, Monica. So we've talked about the vetting and approval process, but once an app is approved, the work doesn't necessarily stop there. So in terms of staying active, Matt, proactive, how do you stay proactive with changing privacy policies?
So, fortunately, we are able to have the Lightspeed Insights dashboard, and that's the same dashboard that our users are able to go to and see which apps are approved and whatnot. But what the Lightspeed Insights dashboard does is it sends us, the admins in the application, uh, changes in our vendor privacy policies, but then it also like highlights specific components of the privacy policy that have changed. That way we can pull up the original rubric because we keep all the rubrics in our, Google Drive. So we can pull up that original rubric and we can, cross reference it again if we needed to. A lot of times the information that the Lightspeed notification gives us is sufficient to where we don't need to do that. For example, this advertiser now, or this vendor now puts advertising for children. So that, we would look at that, because it's also available right there on the Insights dashboard, and turn it off or make a decision about it. So who's getting the alerts. So we are able to set up different levels of administrators inside of Lightspeed, and assigning out different roles, like who is going to get these notifications and who's going to add them and edit them and do different things on that transparency dashboard, as I like to call it, because that lets parents also see what we're using here. And that, it helps us to be proactive, I guess, rather than reactive. If we know, pretty quickly that there's a problem or a potential problem with one of these changes, then we can quickly go in and, turn off that resource, or, do something different, with that resource, instead of waiting for, a parent who came across it while they're helping their child do their homework. So it's, and I feel like it's pretty quick. I'm not sure how they scan the network or the internet and pull that in, but it seems to be immediate. So, again, this used to be like a manual process where we would have a long list of resources, and we would have to go and, did this privacy policy change last year? So now we're just looking at it from year to year versus day to day. So it's a lot easier to knock one or two out, as they come in, versus a whole bunch at one time. And that's how we've done it here, at least. And we do have. I just definitely want to add that we, and I think Monica mentioned this. We definitely have a pretty good, solid team of, I'm going to say, 5 people, and like the core people involved in this whole process. And we've gone through a couple of different trainings, and we've experimented with these rubrics, and it took us time to get where we're at right now. So I would say maybe 3 years ago is where we started the work. But within that first year, we were able to make a lot of leeway. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that to y'all, that it wasn't an overnight change. And then let's see, I think I fully answered that question.
Yeah, and you spoke earlier, Matt, a bit about supporting the transparency of approved apps, that transparency.
Oh, yeah.
Are teachers and staff expected to check that approved list before introducing anything new? And how does that process work?
So once the resource is, either approved or denied, or it's in the process, then we put it on our Digital Insight dashboard, so to where the teacher can just check there. They're also going to have a ticket in, but only that teacher will see that ticket. And what that does for us, the core 5 people, doing a lot of this work, what that does is it shows the teacher, all the other teachers, that it's okay, it's in the process of being reviewed. So I don't also need to put in a ticket, so we're not getting bombarded with one app, over and over and over again. So that's been really helpful, having that transparency there for the teachers. And again, if it's denied, in us putting why, and if it's approved, we have, there's a little notes area where you can say it's approved for students, 612, for example, or it's approved for this school. Maybe that school has a self-contained class where they need that resource. So we can do things like that as well. And it also allows our parents, our stakeholders, people in the community, taxpayers, to be able to look in and see what we are utilizing here in Fayette County. And that's been helpful, when we're having conversations with parents. A lot of times, I know teachers can, look at the resources and, maybe a student needs this or that, instead of, going out and doing a whole lot of research. That dashboard has helped a lot. So, the notes part, I feel like is important, and it helps that teacher, the buy-in part, if you will. So it wasn't just a yes or a no, but they are expected to check it. And there's a question in our ticket submission where it says, I have checked the, dashboard, and we just link the dashboard right there. And, the public facing version is, that's critical, here in Georgia, at least. We do get a lot of questions about the resources that we use. So, I feel like that's set us up, and helped us to be more proactive, with, being transparent. And it's not that difficult to use either, to put the list out there. Once you have that link, it's just that one link. And parents can bookmark it, or students or teachers. And it, also helps us to, just be clear in our communications, and helps us to, by being able to get all the privacy policy updates, we're less likely to make mistakes. We still do, but it definitely helps with that part.
Great. We know it's so important for parents and community to have an understanding, there's an interest in what's being used and why. And so that sounds like a great process. Building on that transparency on the community level, talking about families, parent trust is huge. What are some of the ways that you support, other ways that you support parents and the public in understanding your sort of governance process?
So we host parent nights. Different schools will invite, us in. And a lot of times we do it by feeder patterns. Maybe the high school has a big auditorium, and they invite the 4 feeder elementaries and the 2 feeder middle schools, or however it's set up. But we like to pull this Lightspeed dashboard up, the public facing version, so they can see all the resources, and we show them how they can access that, from our FCBOE, our main website, so that, we open up with that transparency right there. We have Data Privacy Week, and the whole country or world, has Data Privacy Week. So that's something we take advantage of, here, coming up soon, actually. So what we do there is we're strategic about, like, each day, about what we send out. So all of our administrators will get something, and then teachers get something a little different. students get something, even the little students will get something, even it's like a handout or something through their homeroom teacher. And then of course we send out information to our parents. So any of our parents who are in Infinite Campus, we can do an Infinite Campus blast of that communication. And it might be just a tip like, hey, did you know that on your iPhone you can control your child's phone? There's a lot of parent settings in there, and parents don't know this. That Apple doesn't do commercials about like that part of it. And that part's so important for us because at the end of the day, we're concerned about the whole student, not just while they're here at school. So we try to help parents out with those. I'll say, the personal devices, but we don't manage them or anything. We just offer tips and suggestions, if you will. So yeah, Parent Square and Infinite Campus, though, are big updaters. Like I said, the digital insights, the public version of that, they have access to. And I also feel like, it helps build a lot of confidence around our whole philosophy of student safety. The parent, they often see like the doors are locked at the school when they get there, and that's by design. But we also want them to understand that we're also making sure that they're safe digitally too, because we do have a lot of Chromebooks and we're one-to-one in some grade levels, but we want the parents to feel good about that, and definitely the students as well.
Thanks for sharing about that process, Matt.
Yeah.
So, when thinking about data privacy, it's not just about security and compliance. These things impact budget decisions. So wondering, what impact has your process had on tech spending and ROI of your ed tech purchases?
So yeah, when on the insights dashboard, I'm able to go in, or and any administrator is able to go in and filter by an application or a resource. You're able to see the schools that have used that resource, the grade level. You can even get down to the teacher level, and then even to the student level. We look at it to get a picture of screen time. But remember that screen time is way more than just time. It's also like, what are the students actually doing? But we do get a little sense of that here. We've seen a couple of applications and resources that were not being used whatsoever. And 2 years ago, we actually saved $140,000 by getting rid of a resource that was only being used 30, 40 times a year in several different schools. It definitely wasn't worth $140,000 if that's all it was being used for. But sometimes we can redo contracts and renegotiate based on the data that we have. So, by saving that much money, it paid for a lot of other things, right? So a lot of times sorry about the notification. A lot of times as we go back through, the applications that have been paid for, we realize that because when you first put all your resources there, you've got to understand that you've already purchased resources and you may not have used the privacy policy, the vetting part of that. So, there's definitely like, you got to navigate that carefully, and, sometimes work with the vendor directly and say, hey, we need, X, Y, or Z done. And sometimes, renegotiate contracts again or whatever. So I feel like the return on our investment is really good, and we've probably made more back than we've had to spend so far. So, and it helps us with compliance. The House Bill 351 here in Georgia, we're able to show, here's some of the resources that we've been using, with our families, and we even now have, quantifiable information that we can share if that is ever requested. So.
Great. So as part of the process of vetting apps, it sounds like looking into that usage and has helped align, usage with actual behavior in class. And so, in that sense, it's helped with ROI and also in terms of vetting apps for compliance. Those that are not compliance could be cut, and you know, those that fail to meet privacy standards are kind of both wins of the process that your district has put together.
That's right. That's right.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks, Matt, for sharing about your process. You've talked about Lightspeed, and so I wanted to highlight how Lightspeed Insight does provide that visibility and control to help districts answer difficult questions that they're getting from leadership or from their board about, cost optimization, about what's being used that needs to be cut, what's being used that's not secure and compliant. And so what that looks like in action. So as Matt mentioned, Insight integrates with, or Monica may have mentioned this, Insight integrates with one EdTech privacy certification. So that expedites the privacy and compliance review. You see that badge right there in the product to see what's aligning with security and compliance metrics. Getting those alerts when privacy policies change and seeing the highlighted changes, so that saves 2 to 3 hours per app reviewed for compliance on average for many districts, flagging when unapproved apps are being used, etc. So for those in the audience, if you'd like to see where your own district stands, Lightspeed is offering a no-cost app audit. So this helps you get a clearer view of your district's compliance and spending. So you can just scan that QR code to get started if you're interested. And with that, I think we can open the floor to questions. I know we've been getting a lot of engagement in the chat, and we'll try to cover as many as we can. So let's take a look at what's in the queue.
Trying to answer as it goes, but there is one, Matt, that I thought was interesting. Do you work with assessment department to collect quantitative data about how the approved digital apps affect student learning, and then use that data to reevaluate whether the district continues to partner with those vendors?
So that's about where we're at that point where we're starting to discuss that, where we do have assessment platforms that are purchased, but so on one hand, we're looking at usage, but then on the other hand, we're looking at like how effective the resource was. So sometimes it's difficult to connect the effectiveness to the actual like usage, the amount of time used. But we definitely, if a resource is being used a lot, and we also see that students are excelling in a certain area that resource helps support, then we can definitely contribute the two, and maybe dive a little bit deeper into what is that connection, what exactly is happening there. But that's kind of where we're going. It's just it takes some time to get there. To our content coordinators are now like requesting usage information about the resources that they purchase, so that they too can benefit from a lot of the different like online textbooks that they purchase. Is it being used, and if it is being used, then is it help supporting student achievement growth? I hope that answered the question.
Matt, looking through the Q&A, are there any other questions that stand out to you?
Yeah, that's what I was looking through here. Let's see. Yeah, we definitely don't put any PII or anything like that on the public facing dashboard. We actually have done a better job at just scanning that kind of stuff overall and taking it out. Suite. So for Lightspeed customer, is it open to all Lightspeed products, or is it a specific product that Lightspeed offers? Okay. Yeah. So I think I can answer that. So we have Lightspeed Classroom and Lightspeed Relay, and probably some other, things. And that just, again, helps because now we're not distributing our eggs. Like, they're all in one basket, but it's less PII being shared out there. And they all do work together. So, the resources have been fantastic through Lightspeed.
And if I can add to that, Matt, Lightspeed Insight, our analytics platform that, we've been talking about with the compliance and app approval workflows, it integrates with our Lightspeed Classroom platform for teachers, where they conduct their classroom management for digital learning, in the sense that teachers can request an app for approval right from their Lightspeed Classroom interface.
Yep.
And they can also view the list of approved apps, the approved apps list in their Lightspeed Classroom interface. So it makes it easier to stay aligned to the vetting process and to keep it top of mind to make sure that we are using only vetted and approved resources in class.
Yep, that's it. And there's definitely like several different ways to go about that, that the approval and request process. And so it's great to have, those are, I guess, newer options. So we had already built ours, so that's our rubric. But again, basing it on the One Ed Tech rubric. So we're happy with it, and we're actually doing a lot with the AI now, where in ChatGPT, where we have that One Ed Tech rubric built in as a GPT, to where we can plug in a privacy policy link there, and it'll vet and spit out a PDF of the One Ed Tech rubric with the completed information on it. So that's been super duper helpful. We're still aligning with the human review part too, to make sure we're all agreeing, but that's, a direction we're going in also.
Matt, there was a question, you referenced a training module, the name of the training module. I believe the question was around providing capacity for teachers in this process.
Know Before is probably the one I mentioned.
Okay.
KNOW, and then just the letter B, and then the number 4.
Got it. And one question you also referenced, Georgia House Bill. What was the name of that?
I believe that was 351. It's has to do with the social media part. And another thing we can put on the dashboard are information about some of the things that we're doing to fulfill that new law. It just came into effect this year, so we had to go through and redo our whole privacy policy from the district. So the actual policy had to change, by board vote. But in Georgia, we have a Parent Protect also that was offered for free to all the school districts in Georgia. So with Parent Deck and Know Before, we're able to provide some pretty good resources for parents. And then of course we create our own, and again, hosting the parent nights and just trying to be as transparent as we can with everything. Let's see. Yeah, so the chat evaluation template, what I can do with that, everyone, I'll share it with Gianna and Monica, and then I assume they have a list of emails that it could be shared with. But I'll share it with them first, and let them take a look at it and see if that's something that wants to be shared out. But I think it's great to collaborate, for sure on things like that, because, we're don't need to all be in silos trying to do the same awesome work.
One of the questions, Matt, maybe this could be our closing questions. Can you share or tell us more about the questions that teachers and principals are asked as part of the application for approval?
Yeah. So, when they do the application, we really want them to sit down and have a conversation about it. Um, our students are oftentimes on 5 different applications during one, 45-minute class period. And so we want to cut back on that, but it's difficult to do without having a bigger conversation about, well, they're doing this and they have to spend so many minutes on that. So if we add this into the equation, what is that going to now look like? So we really want the principal or the teacher group, PLCs, professional learning communities, to discuss it, and then go to the actual principal and explain the why part. They might even want to pull in the content coordinator, um, you know, because ultimately that content coordinator will have to approve that resource. So if they sit down beforehand and they, explain the why part of it, and what gaps they might have in with their other resources and how this is going to fill some of those gaps, then it's more likely to get approved. But again, it has to, that privacy policy part, which we're now kind of directing teachers more in that direction, so they can kind of quickly understand, hey, this is not going to pass and this is why it's not going to pass. So
So I just, before we wrap up, I want to just say this chat and conversation has been wonderful. We are definitely going to send out the webinar recording as well as the resources and try to answer all those questions in the chat. But I do want to continue this conversation. We have a communities area of One Ed Tech. I think some of my colleagues will probably drop that URL in there, but this is exactly the kind of conversation we want to keep having in communities about your own district's app vetting challenges and your process, and get those answered. So we do appreciate everyone joining and all these wonderful questions. And we thank Matt and Gianna and our partnership with Lightspeed. And congratulations, Matt, and to Fayette on the work that you've done with your app vetting program.
well, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.